The problem is that a lot of them just aren't honest with themselves. Whereas Bitcoin, you have to be honest and truthful because there is no other choice, right? There are just rules and you either abide by the rules or Bitcoin won't accept them. Real estate allows you to do whatever you want. And because of that, real estate investors aren't honest. And so this is the thing that I've noticed. And this is where I now go to these meetups. I now talk to real estate groups and I say, hey, everyone raise your hand. Can we just be honest? So the first thing is, so as you know, there's like $900 trillion in our global monetary system. About a third of that is in income and investment real estate. That's a huge amount of money. And I'm not talking about if someone wants to own their own home and have the white picket fence and raise the family. I get that. I still think there's problems with that. And I still think renting is potentially better for most people. But set that aside, even if you want to own your own home. I'm talking about everyone who wants a second home, an Airbnb, a rental, 4 units here. They want to invest in shopping centers, storage units, office space. Everyone's like, yes, I want passive money. I want mailbox money. I want to make money while I sleep, right? Why not? That sounds like a dream. And so people get in real estate. They also are somewhat programmed and conditioned ever since they're young that like, hey, they're not making any more land, get real estate. You're always going to do well in real estate. You know, let someone else's rent pay for your mortgage. So the first thing I find when I talk to real estate bros is that they're not honest about the fact that they like the brag. They like the flex. People like what real estate says about them. They like to say, hey, I own this house over here in Chicago. Hey, I have a bunch of storage units in Portland. I have an Airbnb in Florida, right? It's fun for them to go to a party and talk about that. Okay, well, first of all, what they will admit is that, you know, one of the first rules of real estate is that you can't get emotional because if it goes up in price, you have to flip it. Right? Real estate goes in these cycles and you can't just hang on to it forever. Or if you're hanging on to it forever, you're not going to get to enjoy the Airbnb because if it's a business, it's constantly rented out. You're not going to, you know, there's nothing for you to do with the storage units or with the office space. It's really just a balance sheet. So like Bitcoin, which people complain about, they're like, oh, there's no tangibility to Bitcoin. I'm just looking at a number. Well, tangibility is really a mirage because with real estate, it is just a balance sheet. It really is just on paper. What the only tangibility is if there's like, you know, a sewer clog or a toilet backs up or, you know, the roof needs to be redone. That's the only time there's really tangibility to real estate. Other than that, it is an investment. You buy it. You can't get emotional. Ideally, you flip it. The people that make the most money in real estate, they flip it. They buy something, they fix it up, 6 to 8 weeks, they flip it. They can't get emotional. And those that hang on to it long term, if you look at their long CAGR, their compound annual growth rate, it's really this, and this is shocking, but again, real estate people have to be honest, it's only 4 to 5%. 4 to 5%. Now you say, well, wait a minute. I always hear about people talking about 20%, 30% in real estate. Yes, and they're talking about very brief moments in time. They're discounting the great financial crisis that we had in 2008 and 2009. They're discounting the savings and loan crisis. They're also discounting the fact that, yes, if you are a real estate developer professional, you went to school for it. This is your degree. You've got a master's in it. You're like, this is what you do for a living. This is how you mine fiat. Yes, you can potentially make some decent gains. Absolutely. You can get up there in the 20 to 30% range, but that's rare because there's so many times people lose their money because those developers really are only putting in 2 to 3% of their own money. They're going to people like you, Rob, and they're going to me. They're forming limited partnerships, these syndicates where they're only 3 to 4% of the capital stack. And then they raise all this money on top from investors to go then buy this property. Now they're going to go get a $400 million, apartment complex with, 100 doors, 100 units and, redo the appliances in the doors and, try to flip it in 5-6 years and sell it to an institution. But the people that are investing in the real estate investors who already have other jobs like you or me or whoever, it's really only 4 to 5% if you stretch it out. So you have to first of all say to yourself, okay, are you willing to have all this friction, all this work, all this stress, all these headaches of having a tangible property just to get 4 to 5% when, Bitcoin is doing easily over 10x that? And maybe into the future that comes down a little bit to 8 or 9x, but completely passive, completely frictionless, which, we both know. So that's the first hump I'm finding with real estate people, that if you could get them in a mode of thinking critically and being honest with themselves and say, hey, are you willing to take away the label and the flex that, hey, I'm a real estate investor, or hey, I own all these properties. If you take that away and you say to yourself, well, I really only own real estate for what it can get me, because I'm going to flip it, or I'm going to get this cash flow, or I'm going to have this money. If you're realistic about that, you really don't need real estate, right? Would you accept some other magic thing over here that gives you 10x that? And you can go to sleep at night and not be woken up in the middle of the night to toilets and trash and tenants, and have your yearly taxes, even if you haven't sold it. So then they'll say to me, here's the second thing, Robin, they'll say, well, I get cash flow. I don't, I have cash flow. And here's my response to that. Again, they have to be honest with themselves. Cash flow is just another form of appreciation. So first of all, most real estate investors don't get cash flow because they're flipping it, right? You could buy Bitcoin and you could sell Bitcoin, just like flipping it. Second, the cash flow, the people that are getting cash flow is a reward for illiquidity. You can't obviously fractionalize your real estate. I can't take off, Michael Saylor can't take off the doorknob from his front door and, go buy a coffee or a dinner with that. That degrades his real estate. You take off the doors, the windows, the walls, right? You can't do that. Bitcoin, you can. And whereas most people can't invest in real estate unless they're already privileged, already sit close to the money printer and get cheap, inexpensive loans, or are part of syndicates, or accredited investors or qualified investors, because you have to have a certain amount down. It does require a certain amount of wealth to even get into real estate in the first place. Obviously, with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter, because one sat will accrete and appreciate the same as a whole Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin. So if I could go over to, someone's mansion in Florida or in London and be like, wow, I can't believe your property's going up 10% this year. I wish I could, but I don't have enough money to. It's like, well, I could buy a crumb of his stucco on the outside of his wall and go up at the same time as him. So real estate investors are like, well, yeah, I like this cash flow. It's like, well, first of all, you have to put up a large amount of wealth to get the cash flow. You're not even getting back your full amount of money unless you're going to sit there for 10, 20 years. Also, you're taxed on that cash flow. That cash flow is income. And everybody knows income taxes are much, much greater than capital gains taxes. If I do have to sell a Bitcoin, I'm going to be taxed down here at capital gains, but only when I sell. There's no taxes by just holding. Real estate, they're paying yearly property taxes, right? Which is why property taxes are just a rebrand of rent, right? All there is in the world is rent. And this is another thing for real estate investors to just think critically about. Like, you are always renting. You might like what the word owning says to you rather than renting, but I either rent to a landlord if I rent, or I rent to the county in which I live if I own. Because the minute I don't pay those property taxes, you get a lien and they'll kick you out, just like a landlord. So that isn't true ownership, right? The definition of ownership is that you possess it, right? And that is, as we know, the killer app of Bitcoin. The killer app of Bitcoin is that you can self-custody property. We've never been able to self-custody property because it could always be taken from you. It can be reappropriated. And that's another thing that especially the big real estate developers won't often like to admit. It's that like, an airport can be built across the street. A county can come in with eminent domain. They could acquire it. Like, they literally can say, this is the market value we're paying you because we need to expand roads. A school can be built next door. You can have noisy neighbors. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You can't pick up your real estate. You can't move it to another place. We can't cross lines drawn in sand. We're stuck. And also, it's not fungible. And every real estate investor will admit the day that they sell their property, they're like, I can't believe someone actually bought it, because every piece of property is unique. It's all different. Even if you're in a complex where there's 100 houses that look alike, they have different light, they face different places, again, different neighbors. And so you can continue to go down this list of taxes, of cash flow, of every single thing, especially for the investments, for the income, for the people that again have a property that they can't even visit or see because they're so successful renting it out. Well, Bitcoin, unless people don't like math, will literally say we can beat real estate in every single area. We can make real estate portable, divisible, permissionless, censorship free, surveillance free. Like, it removes everything. Again, if a real estate person's honest and you say, write down in this column everything that you don't like about your real estate, all the things that you have to do, it's really foreign if you think about it. So here's the thing, like, real estate investing was never supposed to be real estate investing. You know what it was meant to be? It was meant to be real estate living. We turned it into real estate investing because we're trying to hurdle inflation. We're just trying to keep up. It's a numbers game, and real estate has done a really good job because it absorbs global liquidity. But think how foreign it is that we're investing in something that deteriorates. It literally is sitting outside in the weather and in the elements, and that's our investment. And so we're having to spend all this money to continually to upgrade it. Like, honestly, if there's a brand new house that's $1 million, in 20 years it should be $700,000. It's not new anymore. It's not as good. Bitcoin doesn't have that problem. And your audience is probably mostly Bitcoiners, Robin, so they all know this. But real estate people, they get so conditioned and so programmed. They've taken these late night courses. They're watching these YouTube videos. How can I get this 4-unit apartment complex? I'll live in one. I'll rent at the others. That'll pay my rent. But they're taking a huge amount of risk. They have a lot of liabilities. They're having to use a lot of leverage, which can work in a bull market, but we also don't know when the down markets come. And Bitcoin does the same thing. Just like real estate, we have bulls and bears. But when there's a bear in Bitcoin, you just have to sit there. You don't have to do anything. With real estate, you're still having to pay for the new roof, the new siding, the sprinklers, the landscaper. And by the way, every time a tenant leaves, there's 1 to 2 months of turnover, rekeying, new carpets, all the things we know. So, and I mean, look at COVID. Some people say, well, I don't want to have residential real estate. I want to be the big boy. I want to invest in all commercial real estate. Well, what happened to all those people that had office spaces when COVID hit? Those people are still bleeding. And a lot of those places are just sitting empty. And I don't know what the next pandemic or the next crisis will bring. What could that do that we're not thinking about, for storage unit space or shopping malls? Like, I've been invested in shopping malls, a tiny percent because I'm part of like hundreds of other people because these are big, like practically $1 billion portfolios. But when COVID hit, those too, they got decimated. And now people are trying to figure out what to do with all these dated indoor shopping malls. So anyways, I've been talking probably way more than I should, and I can go into more of it. But that's kind of like the big idea when I get into these groups. And all you have to do is almost be a therapist with a real estate person and just ask them questions. Why are you really in real estate? Okay, you want the money. Great. Are you really getting cash flow? And all the time that there's problems with this real estate, cash flow stops. By the way, that's the first thing that stops. So even people that say, oh, I like the cash flow, they're not getting the cash flow that they think they are because of all the others. Because how do you pay for the expenses? From that cash flow. So you show them how Bitcoin is digital property. It's property in cyberspace. And I don't have to worry about a zip code. I don't have to go north, south, east, west. I go up. And it's scarce. It's a neighborhood with only 21 million plots. I can get one of these plots or a fraction of the plot. And unlike real estate, if someone happens to lose their Bitcoin or, it burns down, your house burns down, no one can make a new one. So now it's even that much more scarce. Now everyone else who's being responsible and hanging on to their Bitcoin, really their Bitcoin keys, then their property becomes even that much more valuable. So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's so obvious. To you, it's so obvious. You get all of this. And I know you fully get this. I've heard you talk about this as well. But the real estate people haven't stopped to think about it. They're like, I don't get it. So I think educating about Bitcoin and comparing it to real estate is a big idea, and is a big idea that I feel is way more helpful to most of the world than digital gold. I heard digital gold first and I dismissed it You know why? I don't care about gold. I don't want gold. I know right now at the time of recording, gold is having its moment, but go over 15, 20 years, it's mostly been flat, right? It's it's been around for 5,000 years, and we're now at whatever, over $3,000. Like, Bitcoin's, barely been here, and we're tapping 100K.
There are a lot of interesting points in there, man. I love it. I want to start with maybe a personal, small story. I was really close to buying real estate before I discovered Bitcoin. I discovered Bitcoin when I was 21, 22 years old. And this was right at the moment where I first got my first job for a few years. I made some money in the stock market, and I was looking for I can actually take some out to make a down payment on a real estate to get into this investing world also. It was right at that moment where I also discovered Bitcoin, and luckily I never went into real estate. And luckily I actually discovered Bitcoin. It saved me a lot of headache. It saved me a lot of clarity and focus from real estate way to Bitcoin. And now I can just have Bitcoin, and I don't if I wouldn't be a Bitcoin podcaster and I would, I don't know, have an AI podcast, for example, I wouldn't have to worry about Bitcoin at all, because I know it's there. It's okay. It's like I don't have to look at it every day. I can in the beginning, most do, but the longer you have it, you don't have to look at it. And this really saved a lot of my life energy, actually, to not go and fix toilets and or hire someone that fix toilets and do all those things. It's a lot of headache that I got saved from, and hopefully a lot of other people also got saved from. And I heard out that you have been investing in real estate a lot. Do you invest in real estate? Are you completely out now? Or did you get out of real estate and now fully in Bitcoin?
I'm not fully out, and this again is another problem. I can't get out because some of the big projects that I got into, like for instance, I own a bunch of leases for CVS and Walgreens's. So there's these big buildings where these what do you call them? Consumer stores, right? Where you pick up toothpaste and cereal and whatnot. And they have pharmacies. I'm invested in those in what's called syndicates, right? Where there is a sponsor who found it, but then I'm part of the stack of all of the investors that came in to invest in it. I can't get out of those until they decide to sell. Until they sell, I could be in some of those for the next 20 years. I can't get out of those. Now, ones that I personally went into, I have fully gotten out. And, I had all these Airbnbs. I had one in Joshua Tree. I had one in Nashville. I had one in Palm Springs. I had one in Austin. I was picking all the cool neighborhoods and all these places. And guess what? They were constantly booked, always rented out. Amazing. But guess what? That was my second job. That was a job. And when things went well, man, those checks looked so good. Wow, these checks are just flying in, right? People going to Coachella in Palm Springs. It's like, this was amazing. But then, in the middle of the night, it's like, oh, the heater for the pool isn't working. The toilet's clogged. The air conditioner's not working, and it's 120 degrees out here. It's like, and I'm now jumping in the car and driving 3 hours out to the desert to solve a problem. It's like suddenly I bought myself another job because those properties didn't just come to me magically. I had to buy them. I had to put up a significant amount of capital just to get those in the first place. So once I graduated beyond just single family homes and renting them out and or flipping, I've also flipped about a dozen homes personally myself, where I bought the house, I fixed it, I worked on it and sold it, boom. And I did that every year to 2 years. It's like sell. I executive produced and show ran this TV show on TV called Fix My Flip, right? And so it's like I'm very much into flipping houses, and I was doing all of that. But if I was honest with myself, I didn't care about the house. I would find the ugliest thing, and I didn't care what it looked like afterwards. It's just get it. It almost feels like a meme token in a way. It's like I'm getting it. I know I have to get rid of it as quickly as possible because it's like because the longer I hang on to it, I'm servicing all that debt. I'm servicing the mortgage and the investor's money who I took to be able to get the house in the first place. So anyways, I graduated to all of these syndicates in these bigger commercial properties where it would be like 300 unit apartment complex, 600 unit apartment complex, all these garden style places. And whenever those exited, between, I want to say like 2019, 2020, and now, I would start moving that into Bitcoin. But some of those I'm still stuck in. And you know what? The few that I'm stuck in now are all now losing money. The cash flow has stopped. I mean, some of them for 2 years, no cash flow. Sorry, dear investors, we had to stop cash flow, due to the economy, due to COVID, due to this. So me getting into those in the first place for cash flow, none. My down payment on many of these, which could be anywhere from like $25,000 to $100,000, is held hostage. I don't have access to that, and in Bitcoin terms, I'm just losing. I'm not growing my purchasing power at all in those. So at this point, I hope to maybe just get back my principal. By the way, one or two of them, I know I'm only going to get half of my principal back. I just spoke to the owners of one in Texas, and they're like, sorry, you're going to get about half back. We're going to have to sell it at a loss. Because the interest rates are now adjusting.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.